It is midsummer. Training camp is quickly approaching, which also means that the NFL season is just around the corner. I am Josh Norris here with the rest of the Rotoworld football crew. Directly to my left, it is Jesse Pantuska. Jesse, how are you?
I'm good. And happy Scott Fishbowl Day to everybody in fantasy football.
There we go. Nick Minzio, just a couple weeks ago, you were climbing Machu Picchu. Where does this rank among life achievements along with Machu Picchu?
Right up there, right up there, right up there.
And Roto Pat, this is old hat for you, Patrick Doherty, but how are you, my friend?
Good. I spend most of my energy now on being a dad. I'm the world's best father, and this is really just a hobby for me. And but I try to do what I can.
Good.
So.
Well, I'm glad all of you are here. As I mentioned, we are kind of going to be looking at the one big burning question heading into training camp. We'll get to the AFC and also the NFC. Let me remind you, though, that for around-the-clock NFL news, rumors, injury reports, depth chart changes, analysis, and more, go to rotoworld.com/NFL. I do want to set up the scene, though, right? Because each of us have been given a handful of teams in each division, in each conference. And we have the one question that we want most answered during training camp, right? The days where depth chart changes, roster changes, game plans change, all that good stuff. Pat, you are kicking us off here in the AFC with the defending Super Bowl champions, the New England Patriots.
19-time defending Super Bowl champion, New England Patriots. And yeah, my question for the Patriots for 2019 is really, what kind of offense are they now? Tom Brady attempted, quote-unquote, only 570 passes last year, which is still a lot by any objective measure, but his fewest for a full season since 2010. And, after Thanksgiving, they kind of kicked the offense into a different gear. They averaged, I think, 27.7 rushes per game over the first 10 games of the season. It was 34 after Thanksgiving. It was 38 during the playoffs. They've used a top 90 pick on an early down runner each of the past 2 years. And what do we expect on offense from the New England Patriots this year?
Pat, we've talked about this a lot in the podcast, though, right? Because this is a team that really kind of has warped into obviously a positive and neutral game script. One, Nick, that wants to have a lot of possession and running the football and then just rely on Tom Brady to make the big-time throws when they need it, but they're not just going to spread the ball around like a lot of the rest of the NFL is doing.
Yeah, that's why I'm a little actually worried about James White this season.
Interesting.
You saw his catches go down at times last year. Doesn't get a lot of rushing attempts, so anywhere I own him in Dynasty right now, I'm just kind of like trying to get rid of him if I can. Not really sell low on him, but I just don't think his role is going to be as pass catching as it has been. Where I think Damian Harris and Rex Burkhead, Sony Michel, they're all going to get these carries, and I think White's going to get phased out at weeks at a time.
Because Damian Harris kind of throws a wrench in this whole thing, doesn't he, Jesse? Because at least last year we thought we had this backfield kind of figured out, right? We had Sony Michel as the touchdown scorer on the ground. James White had awesome first few weeks of the season. And then Rex Burkhead was doing Rex Burkhead things every once in a while. But then now Damian Harris, again, top 90 pick, as Pat pointed out, we have no idea what his role is going to be.
Yeah, I think it's also pretty telling that they would use a third-round pick a year after drafting Sony Michel 31st overall. I think that maybe signals that they are a little unsure of his knee. They've talked about his knee issues being chronic. But aside from that, I do see this leaning run heavy just because they don't have that many pass catchers. They lost Rob Gronkowski. I know there's rumors he might come back at some point. But
not if you've seen him.
He does not look like the Rob Gronkowski of old. They have a rookie wide receiver in N'Keal Harry, Demaryius Thomas coming off a really tough injury to recover from, Achilles tear. So even last year with Gronkowski, I believe they were third in the league in rushing attempts, and
Right.
Yeah, it's an offense in transition.
And Brady's going to be 42 too. I mean, we all know he doesn't throw the deep ball like he used to, and he's still putting up good numbers and played really well in the Kansas City game, but he is going to decline at some point.
And we still have Josh Gordon just like hanging around.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was
somehow
mention him.
And hopefully he does play, because we know he's like their number one wide receiver if he does play. And it certainly seems like it's going that direction despite no news. All right, Nick, you're up next with the, how should we say this? The Miami Dolphins, which maybe should be last on this list because they are perennially last in that division, it seems like.
Yeah, gone is Adam Gase, whole new coaching staff in, got the Patriots trying to get him down south, South Beach. Got Brian Flores running the show down there. Chad O'Shea, new OC. Devontae Parker, new fresh start. They picked up that fifth-year option for him. Brought him back, gave him a clean slate. Been tearing up in spring practices like every year. So is this the year Devontae Parker transitions from spring MVP to someone that actually matters on Sundays in October?
Because he's relevant like every May, every June, a little bit in July. But Pat, when we roll around in September, Devontae Parker gets bypassed from a, random wide receiver name each and every year.
Yeah, he specializes in role players, kind of passing him on the depth chart. Maybe even Leonte Carroo did at one point. Surprise and a good sign for your career. I will say, he finally kind of has a quarterback maybe a little better tailored to his skill set, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, a guy who likes to throw up YOLO balls, and Ryan Tannehill, very conservative down the field, not very effective down the field, even though some Dolphins people on Twitter.
That's assuming that Fitzpatrick starts too.
Yeah, he'll probably start to begin the year. And that is a problem. That's going to be a problem if Josh Rosen for him is the week 1 starter. But the long answer short, it's not going to be. He's undefeated in the offseason and very defeated in the regular season.
I mean, he's basically free in fantasy right now. So I'd be willing to take a shot on him. He's big, long. You just fall in love with these traits that he has.
They brought him back.
One 100-yard game last year, 1 touchdown last year. I mean,
there's
nowhere to go but up from here.
It's an interesting scenario though, that the Dolphins are in, right? Because, as soon as Brian Flores was hired and they moved on from Ryan Tannehill, it was like, okay, they're planning for really the 2020 season, not 2019. And even my biggest question is this team even going to be watchable? And I guess that Ryan Fitzpatrick being in the mix adds some high variance, some flavor to this team. But I'm also super interested to see if Josh Rosen was brought down by the Arizona Cardinals in his rookie year and if he can develop at all in a completely new environment.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the storylines of the year for them. And as a whole, maybe they'll be unwatchable, but they have some very watchable players. Kenyon Drake, Albert Wilson, maybe even Mike Gesicki, had a very standard tight end rookie year.
I'm excited about Kalen Ballage, too. I'm really excited about him.
Yeah, so they could have some individual components that you can lock in on. Maybe try not to watch all 11 players at once. But
Kenyon Drake, good football player, but for some reason Adam Gase just never wanted
lifelong
to play
committee
him.
back, even in college.
Jesse, you're up next with the Buffalo Bills. Is there a little bit of excitement with Buffalo and just how explosive this offense might be?
A little bit, now that they've turned it over to Josh Allen, and that's going to be what my burning question is if we can see Josh Allen take the next step as a passer, which was the knock on him coming out of Wyoming. They said he's big. They were the comparisons to Carson Wentz just in terms of his size and athleticism, and he showed the athleticism last year by leading all quarterbacks in rushing yards. But at Wyoming, which is, Mountain West, not exactly a power conference, his completion percentage was hovering around 50%. And it was about the same last year in Buffalo. Didn't have a lot of weapons to work with and was still getting used to the league. So they beefed up the receiving core a little bit this offseason. Got a good deep threat for him in John Brown. And obviously, we know Josh Allen has a big arm, so it'll be interesting. And he has a good slot receiver in Cole Beasley. So, yeah, I guess I'll open it up to you guys.
I think even the offensive line additions, the way they add 6 offensive linemen, they're just they're all in on Josh Allen. I mean, they want to protect him. They want to give him weapons. They got Robert Foster and John Brown on the outside, Cole Beasley in the slot, Frank Gore and LaShawn McCoy in the backfield. So.
And Devin Singletary.
Right.
And TJ Yeldon.
Running back.
Right, yeah. But I'll always forever be indebted to Josh Allen after his Week 17 last year. I mean, this dude won so many people, not so many people because he was so low owned in DFS, but I was on him in Week 17 last year, and he won me so much money. So I'm like, I'll forever love the guy.
I mean, every single year when we look back at young quarterbacks and decision makers and how they handle, rookie year quarterbacks, it's okay. We want to run our system, and hopefully the quarterback can do that. At least last year, the Bills kind of catered their system to Josh Allen and his strengths after his injury, right? And it only seems like they are devoting more assets into that this year, as we talked about with Robert Foster, John Brown, whoever else in terms of downfield playmakers, because we know that Josh Allen, one, not so consistent and precise in the pocket, but two, has an absolute cannon and used that in a very talented way last year with the Bills.
The problem for him, though, is that for the next step as a passer for Josh Allen is occasionally completing, a touch pass. So his next step is a step that most quarterbacks already have figured out by the time they're a freshman in college.
This is why I'm really not on the Beasley thing. It's he's going to be running all these short routes. I'm like,
yeah,
can Josh Allen complete these passes? These aren't the passes he completes normally.
But Josh Allen can still be really productive in fantasy without being a quote-unquote good
He could be the
passer,
classic
good quarterback.
good in fantasy, quite dispiriting in real life for the
like
Buffalo
Lamar
Bills
Jackson.
fan base.
And I think the other thing that you talk about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen is they run a lot. Can they protect themselves? We know Russell Wilson has,
Yeah, and I would even say that the two
done a good job of sliding, protecting himself, and not getting hurt.
The two run differently, though, right? Because with Lamar Jackson, it is designed runs. With Josh Allen, it's almost an unsustainable way that he was creating his rushing production because it was scrambles
He's getting
out of
huge
the pocket.
gains. We're talking 30-yard gains. Yeah, not designed.
He
runs.
averaged over 11 yards per scramble on the ground. Ridiculous, unsustainable, and keep that in mind as we move on to fantasy drafts this year. Okay, I will close out this division with the New York Jets. We talked about Adam Gase a little bit earlier, right? Adam Gase in his history has kind of been known as, I'm not going to say quarterback whisperer, but at least worked hand in hand with quarterbacks and obviously offensive play calls. In his history, he has worked with Ryan Tannehill. In his history, he worked with a young Brock Osweiler. Neither one of those players developed under his tutelage. Now he gets Sam Darnold, who has the record for the youngest player ever to start week 1 in the NFL, who finished the season at a historic rate. I mean, was PFF's #1 passer in the final 3 weeks of the season. I don't think he threw an interception in his final 2 weeks. So to me, Pat, it's all about, is Adam Gase going to help Sam Darnold's development, or is he going to derail it? Because more importantly than Adam Gase in this franchise, Sam Darnold is the New York Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll view it as a positive. I guess I'll view Adam Gase as a positive for Sam Darnold's development. It's a little concerning because Adam Gase, one of the big bullet points on his resume for being a quarterback whisperer was briefly made Jay Cutler watchable.
Yes.
So that's kind of that's been, when that's what has been fueling your rise in the NFL, that's a bit of a red flag.
Oh, he coached Peyton Manning.
Yeah, well, obviously he made Peyton Manning the player he was. But yes, let's view it as a positive because Adam Gase did call it kind of a conservative offense in Miami, but basically cannot be more conservative than it was for Sam Darnold last year, where the Jets were maybe the most horizontal offense in the entire NFL. They finally opened it up down the stretch, and Sam Darnold showed a lot of flash down the stretch, especially in December. And so Gase is sort of conservative by nature, but I think the offense will be opened up. They have added some more playmakers, and Adam Gase. Coaching, for his NFL future, so he's hopefully gonna try to open it up a little.
We've seen Adam Gase as a play caller and a head coach for quite some time, Nick. Do you have a read on Adam Gase as a coach in the NFL?
He says one thing and just does the complete opposite. I remember last year at this time, he was like, let's run 75 plays a game. Let's be one of the fastest plays offenses. And they were 29th in plays per game last year. Just vanilla offense, super slow, just methodical. I mean, I don't know what to believe with this guy. But Sam Darnold, week 1 last year, and then the finish to a season, he had that huge game against Detroit on Monday Night Football where everyone was like, oh my God, this guy's the next coming of something great.
Tony Romo. He looks a lot like Tony Romo in how he plays the game. It's interesting, though, because Adam Gase, and I'm not saying wins and losses are it for head coaches or anyone in the league, but he's 23 and 26 in his career. So if you want to be super simplified, the Jets hired a proven loser to lead their 20-year-old quarterback, their 21-year-old quarterback.
Proven loser franchise.
And kind of high maintenance, too. He's butted heads with a lot of people, even Greg Williams right off the gate.
And their GM is already out of the building after already running.
And he's already leaked that he didn't approve of the Le'Veon Bell contract.
I mean, this is wild. Do you think
he doesn't like any running back they give him.
And you want some, I'm not saying you want to have stability from what the Jets were last year, but at least some stability in that building, and there doesn't seem to be any of it.
Yeah,
and I am worried. I am worried for Sam Darnold entering a season.
I guess if you're looking for a positive sign, he clearly did not believe in Ryan Tannehill. And maybe the Jets, not maybe, the Jets, I guess, were his only opportunity, but he did take the job, which I guess maybe is an indication he's a believer in Sam Darnold. So if you're looking for a positive sign, you can find some straws to grasp at, basically, with Adam Gase and the Jets.
And we're going to be talking a lot about second-year quarterbacks and rookie-year quarterbacks, but really, to me, the only thing that matters from rookie-year quarterbacks is you have signs of consistency, you have major flashes, and again, Darnold did that definitely during his rookie year. It's just that consistency to do that.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.